Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Seetharaman, for, given the current environment, was actually a rather optimistic outlook on growth in the United States and the opportunities for business development between the United States and the Gulf states. He'd be happy to entertain any questions that you might have. Just be sure to identify yourself and to speak loudly so everybody in the audience can hear.
I guess I'd like to ask the Iran question.
Say who you are.
My name's Leslie Buck. I'm a retired businessman. I was in the investment and insurance business for 35 years. I live locally. I guess I'd like to ask the Iran question from the, point of view of an international banker. I guess you talk in terms of risk assessment. I don't know how far views the likelihood of real military conflict between Iran and whether it's Israel or the United States in the next 12 months, where you see that as more likely than not, less likely than not, and how do you think about that as an international bank?
See, the region itself is a flashpoint, as always. See, 40 to 45% of the world oil, 20-25% of the world gas comes from the region as such. Iran was always a flashpoint. And the way the individual sovereign states, whether it is Qatar or rest of the Gulf states, they align with United States for defense and military. They cannot operate without United States. The central command for army is in Qatar. The naval base is in Bahrain. Today, they are ensuring the individual sovereignty, and they are also giving total stability to the region. Whether Iran or Syria, again, it's going to be, a bigger difficulty for everyone to settle the score in Syria. But today, in terms of political governance, U.S. leadership is given. Especially the principle-centered administration, which the U.S. is performing, is a must. To protect the sovereign values of Saudi Arabia, you need United States. So the relationship is strengthening, in my opinion. And some of the regimes which needs transformation and social empowerment, whether it is Iran or Syria, has to change. The change will happen, whether by military or otherwise. U.S. is an absolute leader to drive through. But I'm sure this time there will be a package. In Iraq, the expenditure was more. It drained the resources of the United States. I think the rest of the deals will come with a price. As a price worth paying by the Gulf states because they ensure overall stability in the region. Am I right, Mr. Leslie?
So it's a tough one.
I think.
Would you care to say whether you think the chance for war is?
I don't see it.
More than 50% or less than 50%?
As I said, it was always a flashpoint, Iran. I don't see a war. They will settle the score. See, today's world, people empowerment. Everything is people-centric. You have Twitter, Facebook, interconnectivity in real order. Look at Syria. Extraordinary turn of events. Even though you have, Russia and China are not in real terms with the United States to settle the score in UN Security Council, but eventually they have to understand people power is ultimate. Iran cannot sustain the current climate by its own autocratic substance. They have to necessarily come to terms with the change in leadership. It will happen. Otherwise, it will be forced, like Libya. Who could have imagined a year before Arab Spring could have generated so much social empowerment? Look at Tunisia. Egypt, of course, still it needs to be resolved for stability. But it's evolving to be a fine roadmap. The road is bumpy, but eventually there's no better democracy than freedom. It will happen. Iran will come to terms. Yes, please.
Okay, hi, I'm Professor Brian Scott. I'm an economics professor here at Washington College. And I have a question with respect to China. How much money is flowing from China into that region, the Gulf State region? And if there's a great deal flowing in, how hard will America or Europe have to compete with China to get involved in those types of investment opportunities? Is there a lot of money flowing from China into that area?
It is. See, Chinese have realized, in addition to investing in US Treasury bills, they have to look at diversification. They have chosen Africa as the prime destination. They're also moving into Middle East with multiple investment partnerships and joint ventures. The Gulf states are also, with the change in market preference on account of the incremental growth, they are looking at China or Indonesia or India as an opportunity. In terms of investment flows, I've seen in the last 1 year, Chinese investments in the Gulf states is not less than 15 to 18 billion in the Gulf states. In terms of investment partnership for oil and gas, in terms of construction engineering. So it's beginning to show some signs of direct inflow of investments to the Gulf from the Chinese. But a significant portion of the investments in the last 3 years have gone to Africa than Gulf. I think Gulf slowly is getting the benefit also of Chinese affluence. Yes, please.
My name is Andrew. You're talking about the European collapsing on their monetary system. You said that Qatar and the other Gulf states help for the United States. Do you think that maybe the Gulf states could also potentially help out the European Union at all? Maybe help save out Greece and all the other foreign countries?
See, the Gulf states have learned lessons in the last 3 to 4 years. So if you look at the investment partnerships which the Gulf states have placed, especially like countries like United States, Citibank was invested by Abu Dhabi Investment Authority at $31 per share. You know what is Citi's price today? It's a huge diminution, not even 10%. Similarly, Merrill Lynch, Kuwait Investment Authority has placed $5 billion. They lost. There were similar experience for the Gulf sovereign fund holders in the Europe as well. Now, what the Gulf states are doing as on date is to put in hardcore investment partnership. Like, for example, Qatar Science and Technology Park has signed with the Department of Energy. Again, aviation sector, Boeing is supplying a maximum number of equipments to the Gulf states, whether it's Emirates or Qatar, they're buying. Healthcare, there's a huge investment partnership is evolving between Saudi Arabia and Greater Houston Partnership. So whether the Gulf states are going to rescue Greece or Italy or Spain, I doubt. if there is a good investment partnership, if it is a good combination to support their overall growth, local market growth, then I'm sure the Gulf states are looking at. Having said that, the Qatar has invested in Volkswagen and Porsche, and Qatar has committed for $5 billion investment in Greece for LNG terminals. So it's a diversification strategy as well. But they are not going to throw the money like the past. Now they are very careful. They are doing their due diligence. And on the contrary, they are invested in, as I said, in China. They invested in Agriculture Bank of China. Qatar Investment Authority has invested. So people have learned the lessons in terms of optimization, and they are looking at market where there are growth prospects and sustainability. Yes, please.
To follow up on Andrew's, I guess, an exclamation point to this question. Professor Michael Harvey, business management. Does Bilateral Bank have any exposure in Europe?
No. We don't have. No, the Europe, the situation is very precarious. The banks are, European banks are not being funded by even American banks. And the Gulf banks are very, very skeptical. Yeah, please.
Two questions. First has to do with Syria. We all read about the politics there and the violence, but what's less clear is the financial situation. How much longer do you think the Assad regime can stay in power before the financial squeeze really forces it to abdicate power or do something much more fundamental? And the second question has to do with Russia. The Russians are going to go to the polls, and they're probably going to validate Vladimir Putin for another 6 years. The country has all sorts of political questions. It is becoming more and more reliant on petrochemicals to really boost its growth. Do you feel bullish or bearish about the future of Russia?
I'm bearish about Russia. And first, let me answer to your Syria. So the regime change is inevitable. See, it's people power again. The mass killing which they have orchestrated was, it's a point of disbelief for any civilized society to accept this kind of nonsense. So there is an internal revolution already cropping up like Libya. It is a question of time. I think the global power will have its own nuances to get it done, but meanwhile, it's changing dynamics. Leave alone as I said, the Security Council resolution was defeated, vetoed by these two, but conceptually, I won't give more than a year. All these dynamics will redefine the regime. When it comes to Russia, my question is on transparency and governance. Even the corporate side, we had many instances in the past. Investment partnership by BP was withered away. And again, when it comes to anti-money laundering, there were no proper framework for global governance to accept it. And still there are parallel systems which drives the mafia money. When it comes to Vladimir Putin aspiring for the leadership after 10 years is something which doesn't dictate the right kind of value system. So it's in my opinion it's very jittery. It's not reliable. It is not acceptable for a well-governed society. I think it's a question of time. The new alignment will crop up. The birds of the feather flock together, same feather flock together, like Syria. I wouldn't use the word China. China still to be tested in terms of transparency or even political stability. With the change in face of the world, with technology driving the change, whether Twitter or Facebooks, we need to see some real reorganization in China as well in the years to come. So it's surprising that these two countries are supporting the current Syrian regime. That itself shows the character and commitment in terms of governance.